I'm getting my private pilot's license, and so I'm flying. And before I was doing this movie, I asked the boss if I could go fly, and he said yes. So I remember, one of those days, we were up in the air in a Cessna 172, and just cruising along, and then the tower came on in sort of a panicked voice and said, "There's a plane in your vicinity. He's not on our radar. He hasn't checked in with us, and he's coming up right on you." And no sooner had we looked out the window than another plane came right at us, and then had to make a sharp left or a right. I remember my instructor being very rattled about that, and he said that that had never happened to him before. And so things can happen. I haven't flown since. Yeah, it's not that scared it out of me, but I just haven't gotten back in the cockpit, so that's my story.
Jeez, we just heard that now? Jeez. We've been doing this press junket for months. We just hear that story now? You bastard, keep that to yourself. I did not turn on the TV until after the plane was, I literally saw this scene on television, and actually my first thought was of what people must have thought who happened to be looking at the window of their car or the window of their office building and saw this commercial airline flying low against the skyline of Manhattan, New Jersey. And I've since spoke to people who witnessed it, and they all said the same thing. They said that plane is filled with terrorists, and thousands of people are going to die in a matter of minutes. And it's going to be a horrible day for America and New York City. And they waited for the news reports to come on and the sirens to go off and the cloud of smoke to appear on the horizon. It never did. It was just the opposite of the worst day in New York City. It was one of the greatest days in New York City. That's a testament certainly to, without a doubt, the first responders who dropped what they were doing and got those people off the wing of the airplane in as short as a time as 7 minutes, and certainly also to the man himself who physiologically went through this nether state in order to do something that's, let's just say it's 99% impossible to do, land a plane on water like that. 99%. Nice. The end result of playing Sully in movies in the film is that anytime I'm on a plane and there is a bump or a shudder or a noise, everybody in the plane looks right at me to explain what just happened.
And do you have the
Of course, I have an answer. I say, they're just alternating the fusion grids so that an hour, I make up something that sounds impressive and technical, I believe they just powered up the APU. It's standard stuff. And they, oh, thank you, Tom, thank you. And they all fly on. We all fly on peacefully.
All right. Derrière, s'il vous plaît, Pauline, la dame juste ici.
Bonsoir, bonjour. La question s'adresse particulièrement au commandant de bord, Sullenberger, et aux autres pilotes. Avez-vous revolé après le ditching? Et quelles ont été vos impressions lors du vol après l'amérissage forcé?
Okay, Sully, it's a question for you. Did you fly again after this incident? And if so, what feelings did that bring up in you?
I did fly again. It was important that I do that. I wanted to. Flying is my life's passion. It's what I do. It was my profession. I waited until I was ready. I had to get my sleep cycle back to normal. I had to get my blood pressure, my pulse back to normal. And I had to be requalified because it had been a number of months since I'd flown. And when I went back to work, it felt good. It felt like coming home. It felt like putting on a favorite pair of jeans because I'd spent my life doing this. However, I've got to say that the first time after I returned to work, when I saw a flock of birds fly nearby, it got my attention. I was sensitized to that particular risk for some period of time. And I will also say that shortly after I got requalified, I made it a point to fly again with our first officer from the famous flight, Jeff Skiles. And I also made it a point a year later when I retired from the airline after 30 years to make my final retirement flight with Jeff. it was a good way to start and a good way to finish.
Aaron, did you get a chance to talk to Jeff? What did he tell you that helped you? Ma question pour Aaron, c'est est-ce qu'il a pu aussi parler un peu avec son vrai personnage Jeff Skiles et qu'est-ce que ça lui a apporté?
Yes, I spoke to him. I guess he took me through it. All the obvious questions that I had for him. What did it feel like? What were your thoughts? What were your first impressions? And then what happened afterwards? And he took me through the whole thing. We talked on the phone for a few hours. I don't know. I mean, he went through it with me. I don't know if I got to the real, heart of what you guys felt. How can you really explain that to another person? But, I think he's got a very good attitude about it. He's flying today still. The thing that impressed me most was that when he said that the first thing that he noticed was that, they have the whine of the engines, right? And that's a comforting sound, right? And then the birds hit, and then you hear silence. And he said how terrified inside he was when he heard silence. Terrified in the sense that it's an abnormal sound when you're flying, and then you have to react to that. And he'd never had that before. And then the events that followed after that. And then he told me about how hard it was physiologically afterwards, and the sleepless nights and the shaking, and the effect that it had on his life afterwards. I probably didn't get enough time with Jeff because Jeff continues to work today, and so I didn't spend enough time with him, I don't think. But I got the lowdown, I think, from what Sully just said.
Ici?
À la fin du film, Clint Eastwood insiste, par la voix de Sully et de Tom, disant que ce n'est pas l'action d'un homme, mais l'action d'un groupe. Et c'est sur la question d'héroïsme que je voudrais vous poser la question. Tom, est-ce que vous pensez que vous avez en face de vous un héros ou pas? Et vous, Sully, est-ce que vous pensez que vous avez fait quelque chose d'héroïque?
He's saying at the end of the film, we hear in voiceover in Tom's voice this idea that this wasn't the action of one man, but of a group. So the question is, for Tom, do you feel like what Sully did was truly heroic? And Sully, do you feel the same way that what you did yourself was heroic?
I watched every bit of video after the fact of Sully being interviewed, and I heard him answer this question many, many times. People, like interviews in which the journalist just would look at him and say, but you're a hero. And I have never met anyone who has done something heroic who has answered that by saying, yes, I am a hero. Living up to your training, following your instincts physiologically, doing something that is almost otherworldly in order to make good things possible. I think the true definition of a hero is someone who voluntarily risks their lives for the good of others, puts themselves in harm's way for the good of others. And I think in many ways, the heroic act that Sully and Jeff Skiles and many other people do every day in their normal job lives up to that definition. They fly planes. they cheat death. They go contrary to the laws of physics. At the same time, they use the laws of physics to their advantage. They have this winged, powerful aircraft in which they put over 100 babies, fathers, dads, sons, mothers, grandparents on board, and they say, you sit back and I will get you from LaGuardia to Charlotte in a boring manner, but it will actually be a heroic thing I do. I will take responsibility for your life. That is a brand of heroism in and of itself that requires expertise and years of dedication. The moment of the water landing, without a doubt, this was, let's call it a superhuman effort, because it seemed as though to require nerves that ordinary men do not have, and experience that ordinary people don't usually aspire to. Once that plane was in the water, an awful lot of heroic people took part in the next, 2 hours of getting those cold, wet people out of the water, off the plane, onto the stage of their boats, in blankets, on shore, to the point that they were all safe. So, I don't want to bandy, but you can't bandy about the word hero so much that it cheats the actual meaning of it. And so I will say, he won't, but I'll say, yes, he is a hero. But he will, I tell you right now, he's going to say the same thing I just said. So you deal with it.
Let me just bounce off the back of that, though, and the fact that there were many of the first responders who actually were in the film as extras. One even plays the boat captain. Did you all get a chance to talk to them, talk to them at all? Ma question, c'était, il y a quand même plusieurs secouristes de ce fameux jour qui étaient là dans le film en tant que figurants, en tant que les capitaines du bateau. Est-ce qu'ils ont pu échanger lors du tournage?
Yeah, they were there. Like they were the guy who ran the ferry. Our first day of shooting was out on the Hudson itself. There was no plane there, but many of the ferries were there, and people were in the rafts. And yeah, they look. They got to hire people to play those roles anyway. So why not just send the word out? And they all took off a day of work and showed up, even on the pier. The cops and the Red Cross workers and the firemen. Yeah, they showed up. It was interesting because they knew what they had been a part of. And I think it was a point of pride and honor that they were invited back to participate in it, the recreation.
Juste ici.
Oh, hello. This is a question for all of you. Whoever wants to answer it, I want to say, what do you think, how important is this movie, the story, this event for the people of New York, which have to suffer so much after 9/11?
Voilà, donc l'importance de ce film pour les gens à New York qui ont tellement souffert après le 11 septembre. Aaron?
That's Sully. Yeah.
I think in many people's minds, our flight was a bookend to the terror attacks of September 11th, 2001. And as one character says in the film, this is finally a good news story in New York involving an airplane. And I think that's how many people think of it.
Do you want to add something? No? Okay, go ahead.
Hello, good to see you. I'm Marcel from Germany, and I have a question for Tom Hanks. After Castaway, Catch Me If You Can, Terminal, and now this one, I would be really afraid if you are standing next to me at the airport or actually on a plane. Is there any connection or reason why you are so fascinated by these stories?
D'accord, donc la question c'était après Solomon, Terminal, Attrape-moi si vous pouvez, et ce film, il aura peur, c'est